He made me wear an apron at her party, serving wine to strangers who laughed at me. He called it helping family, but he did not know. While I filled their glasses, I saw the cracks, not just in our marriage, but in her fake financial empire, and I was preparing a congratulatory speech, one that would burn it all to the ground. My name is Alara Vance. I am 38 years old, and my world is built on facts. At Veritas Financial Forensics, the company where I work, truth is not a concept. It is a deliverable. It is the hard, cold, unassailable number at the bottom of a balance sheet. I find comfort in spreadsheets, in the clean lines of data that, when properly interrogated, always confess. My mind is trained to spot the discrepancies, the tiny hairline fractures in a financial statement that signal a coming collapse. It is a useful skill. It is not, however, a skill that is valued in places like this. This place was the West Lake Hills mansion belonging to my husband's cousin, Isabella Sterling, and I was here because of my husband, Liam. Liam is a man who builds his life out of aspirations. As a tech marketing director, his job is to sell illusions, to package potential and call it reality. He craves status the way a starving man craves bread. He is obsessed with the appearance of wealth, a concept I find inefficient. Wealth is either there or it is not. For Liam, it was something to be pursued, courted, and, if necessary, fabricated. We were, according to the gilt-edged invitation, attending a party to celebrate Isabella's latest triumph. The mansion was a monument to excess, a gleaming white behemoth perched on the hills overlooking Austin, every window blazing with light. Marble statues, likely ordered from a high-end catalog, flanked an entryway large enough to park a small plane. Inside, crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, fracturing the light into 1,000 nervous splinters. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the dull roar of performative conversation. It was opulent, and it was suffocating. I am not built for this. I am built for quiet offices and the soft click of a calculator. As Liam steered me through the crowd, his hand a little too tight on my back, I started to see the things I was not supposed to see, the things my forensic accountant's brain could not turn off. The massive painting that dominated the grand salon, the one Isabella had loudly referred to as my little Picasso, was a print, a very, very good print, the kind you buy for thousands, not tens of millions, but a print nonetheless. I could see it from 10 feet away. There was no texture to the paint, no life in the brushstrokes. Under the spotlights, the surface had a uniform, flat sheen. It was a lie, hanging in the most prominent spot in the house. Then there was the champagne. Waiters in crisp white jackets moved through the throng, pouring bubbly from dark green bottles with familiar shield-shaped labels, Dom Perignon. But I watched one waiter for a full 2 minutes. He never uncorked a new bottle. He arrived from the kitchen with them already open. When he topped off my glass, I discreetly brought it to my nose. There was none of the crisp, yeasty aroma. I took a small sip. It was cloyingly sweet, cheap Prosecco poured into expensive, pre-opened bottles, a performance for people who wanted to be seen drinking the label, but who lacked the palate to know the difference. This was Isabella's world, all facade, no foundation. Isabella Sterling herself, a woman I guessed was around 45, finally descended the grand staircase. She was striking, draped in red silk that clung to her curated figure, diamonds glittering at her throat. She moved with a predatory grace, her laughter loud and commanding, drawing a circle of admirers around her. Liam stiffened beside me, pulling on his suit jacket, a bright, desperate smile plastered on his face. "There she is," he breathed, as if witnessing royalty. She finally glided over to us, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, a flicker of something dismissive in her gaze. "Liam, darling," she boomed, kissing the air beside his cheek. Then she turned to me, her smile tightening. "And Elena, so glad you could make it." It's Ilara, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Isabella waved a dismissive hand, her bracelets clattering. Elena, Ilara, whatever. Listen, darling, be a love and find one of the servers. Will you? We are desperately low on ice in the study. Just tell them to fix it. She treated it not as a request, but as an order to a subordinate. She had mistaken me for the help. Or, more likely, she simply did not care to know the difference. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Before I could form a reply, Liam jumped in with a short, barking laugh. Of course! Isabella, right away! He gave me a sharp nudge, his fingers digging into my arm. Isabella had already turned away, her attention captured by a state senator. I looked at my husband. She thinks I'm a waitress. Liam. Oh, come on, he hissed, his smile vanishing the moment she was out of earshot. Do not be so sensitive, Ilara. She is busy. She has 100 people here. Just play along. It is a joke. It did not feel like a joke. Just, for once. Can you try to fit in? He pleaded, his eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching us. She is family. She is important. Just try to accept a little teasing. His desperate need to please her, to be accepted into this flimsy, fraudulent world, was a cold weight in my stomach. He was not protecting me. He was offering me up as a sacrifice to his ambition. This was his clear, unmistakable choice. I extricated my arm from his grasp and moved away, needing air, needing to be anywhere but beside him. I drifted toward the terrace, and that is when I saw the other crack in the foundation. Marcus Sterling, Isabella's husband. He was in a dark corner of the room, partially hidden by a potted palm, looking impossibly pale. While the rest of the party buzzed on champagne, he was clutching a tumbler of dark amber liquid. Scotch. He was drinking it fast, his eyes locked on the screen of his phone. He typed furiously, swiped, then stared at the screen, his jaw working silently. He looked like a man on a ledge. He looked terrified. He was not a host, enjoying his own party. He was a prisoner, trying to calculate his odds of escape. My internal alarms, the ones that ring when I see cooked books and hidden debts, began to pulse. A short while later, the music softened, and Isabella stepped onto a small, makeshift stage, a microphone in her hand. A spotlight found her. Darlings, darlings, thank you all for coming, she crooned, her voice echoing through the room. It means so much to have all our dearest friends here to celebrate with us. She paused for dramatic effect, placing a hand on her heart. As many of you know, Sterling Ventures is more than just a company to me. It is a promise of a brighter future. Liam had reappeared at my side, his eyes shining with an almost religious fervor. And tonight, Isabella continued, her voice swelling, I am absolutely thrilled to announce that we have just finalized our most exciting acquisition to date. We have successfully acquired a revolutionary biotech startup that is going to change the face of medicine. The room erupted in applause. It was a brilliant performance, vague, exciting, and utterly unverifiable without a prospectus. I watched Marcus in the corner. He did not clap. He just ordered another scotch. To the future, Isabella shouted, raising her glass of cheap Prosecco. To the future, the crowd roared back, but the loudest voice of all belonged to Liam. He pushed his way slightly forward, his own glass held high, his face flushed with excitement. Congratulations, Isabella, he shouted, his voice thick with emotion. The crowd quieted, turning to look at him. He had captured the spotlight. It is an honor to be a part of this. I am just so proud to be your newest investor. The room cheered him. Isabella blew him a kiss. I stood frozen. The glass in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Investor, I am the forensic accountant. I manage our books. I balance our retirement accounts. I know to the penny where every dollar of our joint savings is. And not one single cent of it was approved for an investment in Sterling Ventures. Liam turned back to me, his eyes gleaming, expecting me to share his triumph. He saw the look on my face, and his smile faltered, just for a second, before he was swept up in a wave of congratulations from strangers. I knew, in that instant, with the certainty of a balanced ledger, that the lie hanging on the wall was not the only fraud in that room. The drive home was a vacuum. The only sound in the car was the whisper of the tires on the dark asphalt and the faint, obnoxious hum of Liam's self-satisfaction. He was practically vibrating in the driver's seat, still high on the reflected glamour of the party, on the validation he'd received from that crowd of frauds. I sat perfectly still, the anger in me a cold, dense object. The silence stretched as we left the glittering hills of West Lake and moved toward our much more modest and very real life. I let the silence build, let it become its own character in the car, a third passenger he would have to acknowledge. We were almost home when I finally spoke. My voice did not waver. You invested our money. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact, laid on the dashboard between us. Liam's posture stiffened. The humming stopped. Ilara, it was an opportunity. You heard her. That biotech acquisition is going to be huge. How much? Liam. He hesitated, a clear sign he was calculating the smallest number he could get away with. It was just a significant portion, to show we are serious, to get in on the ground floor. How much? He exhaled, a sharp, frustrated sound. Look, it is a lot. Okay, but it is an investment. Ilara, that is what you do with savings. You make them grow. I turned to look at him in the darkness. At the profile of a man I was suddenly realizing I did not know at all. I am a forensic accountant. Liam, my entire job is to analyze risk. My entire job is to find the lies in the ledgers. And everything about that woman, everything about that house, is a lie. Did you check her books? Did you ask for a prospectus? Did you do any due diligence at all? His hands gripped the steering wheel so hard, his knuckles went white. Due diligence. She is family. That is not an answer. That is an excuse. The champagne was fake. The Picasso was a print. Her husband looks like he is about to be indicted. That is not a sound basis for an investment. Liam, that is a cult. He hit the brakes harder than necessary as we pulled into our driveway, throwing us both forward against our seatbelts. He turned the engine off, plunging us into a thick, angry silence. You know what your problem is, he spat, turning to me, his face ugly with resentment. You are jealous. You are just jealous that she has built something incredible, and you are stuck in your little cubicle checking receipts. The insult landed exactly as he'd intended, a sharp, precise blow. My boring desk job, as you called it at the party, pays for this car. It pays the mortgage you seem to have forgotten we share. That is the problem, he exploded, his voice rising to a shout in the confines of the car. You are happy with this. You are happy being small. I am not. I want more. Isabella is offering us a chance at more, and you are trying to sabotage it because you are too scared to take a risk. This is not a risk. Liam, this is self-destruction. You have taken our joint savings, money I earned, and you have handed it to a con artist without my permission. That is not an investment. That is theft. The word hung in the air. He flinched, as if I had slapped him. His anger morphed into something colder, something manipulative. I am trying to build a future for us, Ilara, something better than just spreadsheets, and I am going to fix this. I am going to prove to you that you are wrong. I just stared at him. How? By giving her more money we do not have— No, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. By getting you inside? By making you part of the team? A cold dread, sharper than the anger, began to creep up my spine. What are you talking about? Isabella is hosting her huge annual charity fundraiser next month, he said, as if this was wonderful news. It is the event of the season. The most important night on the Austin social calendar. Everyone who is anyone will be there. So she will probably serve cheap sparkling cider and crystal flutes. Her event planner just quit, Liam said, ignoring me. She needs someone to step in, to manage the books for the event, the donations, the auction, the vendor payments. She needs someone to manage the finances. I stared at him. Absolutely not. You will do it, he said. His voice was flat. I will not, I said, my hand moving to the door handle. I am not working for that woman. I am not enabling her fraud. And I am certainly not doing it for free. My billable rate is $300 an hour. She can send me a check. You will do it for free, Liam insisted, his eyes locking onto mine. He was desperate. She needs someone she can trust, someone from the family. This is our chance to get in. Alara, to show her we are loyal. She will see how brilliant you are, and she will respect us. She called me Elena. She asked me to fetch ice. She does not respect me, Liam. She thinks I am the staff, and after tonight, she thinks you are a fool. That was the final cut. Liam's face closed down. The manufactured charm vanished. The desperation hardened into a threat. He leaned in, his voice dangerously quiet. You will do it, Alara. You will go to that house every day until the event. You will smile. You will organize her messy little receipts, and you will serve her. You will prove to her, and to me, that you are a part of this family, that you support me. And if I do not, he did not even blink. If you do not, I will take it as a sign. A sign that you do not trust me, that you do not support me, and that you no longer believe in this marriage. The ultimatum, the final pathetic move of a man who knew he had already lost the argument. He was holding our marriage hostage, demanding ransom in the form of my free labor and humiliation. He expected me to cry, to bargain, to fold. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the weakness. I saw the pathetic, cult-like devotion in his eyes, the terror of being cast out of Isabella's cheap, glittering orbit. He was a drowning man, trying to pull me under with him. But he had just made a fatal error. He had mistaken my silence for submission. I held his gaze for a long time. I let him see the coldness in my eyes. Then, I let my expression soften, just a fraction, a mask of weary resignation. All right, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I will do it. The relief that flooded his face was disgusting. He physically sagged against the seat, a triumphant, relieved sigh escaping him. Ilara, thank you. You will not regret this. This is the right move. This is going to save us. He genuinely believed he had won. He believed he had broken me, bent me to his will. I got out of the car and walked into our house, leaving him to bask in his hollow victory. He was right. I would do it. I would go to that house, and I would smile. But I was not going there to save our marriage. I was not going there to serve Isabella. Liam had just handed me the one thing I needed, the one thing a forensic accountant dreams of. He had given me a golden invitation, a legal, legitimate reason to be inside. He had just given me the keys to her kingdom, and I was going to use them to find every last skeleton, every last fraudulent entry. I was going to manage her books. All right. I was going to manage them straight into a federal indictment. I arrived at the mansion at 9 o'clock the next morning, as instructed. I had chosen my outfit with care, a beige linen skirt, a plain white blouse, and flat shoes. I was dressed for servitude, calibrated to appear non-threatening and competent, but not brilliant. Liam had kissed me on the cheek as I left, his eyes bright with a disturbing, misplaced pride. This is great. Alara, this is really, really great for us. A housekeeper I did not recognize let me in, her expression impassive, and led me not to the grand salon or the airy, light-filled study I had glimpsed from the hall. She led me past the gleaming, industrial-sized kitchen, down a narrow corridor I had not known existed, and stopped at a plain wooden door. "Mrs. Sterling said to put you in here," the housekeeper murmured, opening it. The room was a closet, a large walk-in supply closet, smelling faintly of almond-scented cleaning products and old paper. It was windowless, the only light coming from a fluorescent bulb overhead. Against the far wall, squeezed between shelves of bulk paper towels and silver polish, was a small metal folding table and a single matching chair. Isabella breezed in a moment later, already wearing expensive athletic gear, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She was holding a green juice and did not look at me. "Ah, Elena, you are here. Good." She gestured to the table. On it sat a single, large designer shoebox. It looked like it had once held a pair of very expensive boots. "This is it, the gala. My last event girl was a complete moron, so it is a total disaster. Invoices, receipts, donation pledges, contracts. It is all in there." She took a sip of her juice. "I need a full financial breakdown. What we have spent, what we have pledged, and what is left. Make it make sense." She looked at her watch, a diamond-encrusted monstrosity. "My trainer is here. Just try not to interrupt me." She turned and left, the door clicking shut behind her, leaving me alone in the fluorescent hum. I sat down on the cold metal chair. I opened the shoebox. It was exactly as she'd described, a chaotic nest of crumpled thermal receipts, sticky notes with unreadable messages, cocktail napkins with numbers scrawled on them, and thick, unopened envelopes from vendors. This was not a filing system. This was a garbage can. For the next 3 days, I played the part of the diligent, grateful servant. I was Alara Vance, the mousy volunteer, the quiet helper. I brought my own laptop, created a spreadsheet from scratch, and began the agonizing process of archaeological accounting. My work was, as I expected, constantly interrupted. At 10:30, her voice would boom through the house. "Elena, be a darling and make me a coffee. Black, 2 sweeteners, and bring it to the pool house." At 1, it would be, "Elena, the caterer is on the phone. I cannot be bothered. Just get the details for the tasting menu." At 3, I was sent to her driveway to sign for a delivery of cases of wine. I was, for all intents and purposes, the unpaid intern, the house manager, and the bookkeeper, all rolled into one. I fetched her dry cleaning. I listened politely as she complained about the flower arrangements, the linens, the unbearable humidity. She criticized my pace, questioned my methods, and treated me with the bored condescension of a woman who had never worked a real day in her life. And every night, I went home to Liam. "So, how is it going?" he would ask, his voice brimming with a forced, anxious cheerfulness. "It is a lot of work," I said on the second night, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "Her books are a complete disaster. She had me fetch her tennis shoes from the cleaner today." Liam's face tightened. "Ilara, come on. You have to try harder. You need to show her you are a team player, that you are not above helping out. This is for us. Remember, this is our future. Can you just swallow your pride for a little while? Just try to hua hop, to fit in." I looked at him, at this stranger who was telling me to submit, to be smaller, to endure humiliation for his fantasy. "I am trying, Liam," I said, my voice flat. "I am trying very hard." On the 4th day, I finally had the chaos wrangled into a semblance of order. I had separated the invoices from the donation slips. I was focusing on the expenses for the Sterling Bright Future Fund, the charity arm of her operation. Isabella had, in a fit of generosity, given me temporary view-only access to the charity's online bank statements so I could make sure everything matches. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was exactly the kind of mistake a narcissist would make. I was cross-referencing the invoices in the shoebox with the debits from the bank account. It was tedious. $5,000 for the venue, $18,000 for the orchestra. Standard, if inflated, costs for a high-end gala. Then I got to the largest expense category, catering. I found a series of invoices from a single vendor, Elysian Imports LLC. The payments were large and regular. One for $20,000, another for $30,000, a third, just last week, for $25,000, $75,000 in total, all paid out in the last 6 weeks. A cold, familiar hum started in the back of my brain. I pulled the invoices from the stack. They were wrong. High-end vendors used heavy linen blend paper, crisp logos, detailed itemization. These were printed on cheap copy paper. The letterhead was basic, done in a standard Microsoft Word font, and the description of services was identical on all three. A single line. For event consulting services. That was it. Not filet mignon, 500 plates. Not champagne and waitstaff, 8 hours. Just consulting. And why imports? What was a catering and event consultant importing? It was too vague. It was sloppy. It was a red flag the size of that fake Picasso. It was the kind of invoice a person creates when they need a paper trail, but do not want to specify the crime. My pulse quicked. I looked at the clock. Isabella was at her standing 2-hour lunch appointment. Marcus was, as usual, at the office, a place I was beginning to suspect did not exist. I was alone. I pulled out my personal cell phone, careful not to use the mansion's Wi-Fi network. I toggled to my own data plan. I opened a secure browser and went straight to the Texas Secretary of State's business entity database. My fingers flew across the tiny keyboard. Elysian Imports LLC. I hit search. A record popped up. The entity was active, in good standing. My eyes scanned the details. Date of formation 6 months ago. My stomach tightened. That was just after they'd moved into this mansion. I looked at the registered address. It was not a kitchen. It was not an office building. It was a P.O. box at a postal services store in a strip mall on the other side of town. This was it. The tiny, hairline crack I had been searching for. A $75,000 catering company run out of a mailbox. My mind was racing. Who was behind it? I clicked the tab for registered agent information. Every legitimate company must have one. A person or entity responsible for receiving legal notices. My screen refreshed. My blood did not just run cold. It froze. The name listed as the sole agent, the founder, and the manager of Elysian Imports LLC was not a lawyer or a registration service. It was Marcus Sterling. I sat back in the metal chair, the fluorescent light humming above me. It all snapped into place with a sickening, beautiful clarity. Isabella was not hiring a consultant. She was inventing one. She was taking tax-deductible donations from wealthy, unsuspecting patrons for her charity. Then, she was writing enormous checks from that charity account to a phantom company, a shell, owned and controlled by her own husband. They were not just living off debt. They were actively, criminally, embezzling money. They were laundering donation funds, washing them clean through Elysian Imports, and using them to pay for the leased diamonds, the rented Picassos, and the mortgage on the very house I was sitting in. I took a slow, deep breath. I minimized the browser. I went back to my spreadsheet, my hands perfectly steady. I heard the front door open, and Isabella's voice echo down the hall. I quickly opened a new tab, a search for wholesale flower prices. When she poked her head into my closet 10 minutes later, I looked up, a perfect mask of mild confusion on my face. "Oh, Mrs. Sterling," I said, pushing my hair back. "I am so glad you are back. I just cannot seem to make these floral invoices make sense. I think they may have overcharged you." She sighed, exasperated. "Elena, must you be so slow? Just pay the bill. I cannot be bothered with these tiny details." "Of course," I said, smiling my meekest smile. "I will handle it." She walked away, and I turned back to the screen. She was right. The tiny details were my job, and I had just found the one that was going to burn her entire world to the ground. To have a secret is a strange, cold power. The next morning, I returned to the supply closet, but I was no longer an accountant. I was a spy. Every interaction was suddenly a performance. Every time I said, "Yes, Mrs. Sterling," I was lying. Every meek smile was a fabrication. I had to hide the Elysian Imports discovery. It was too soon. It was the ace, and you do not play your ace until the final hand. For now, I had to become Elena completely. I had to be diligent, but slightly stupid. I needed more access. I found Isabella by the pool, lounging on a daybed while a young man in linen pants read her options for the gala's floral centerpieces. I waited, holding my laptop to my chest, my posture deliberately subservient. "What is it, Elena?" she said, not looking up from her magazine. "I am so sorry to bother you, Mrs. Sterling," I began, pitching my voice a little higher, a little more uncertain. "I have finished organizing the shoebox, but I have run into a small accounting problem, a compliance issue." That got her attention. She slid her sunglasses down her nose. "A problem. It is, well, it is just a little confusing. These vendor payments to Elysian Imports. They are very large, and they were paid from the charity account. But the invoices are just for consulting. They are not itemized." I feigned a worried, furrowed brow. "I am just worried about the IRS. They can be so terribly picky about commingling funds between a charity and a private business. They might see this as, well, improper." I let the word hang in the air. "What are you saying?" she said, her voice sharp. "Oh, nothing," I said, stepping back, as if startled by her tone. "Just that we need to protect you. We need to make sure the books are perfect, in case of an audit. To prove these were legitimate charity expenses, I really should cross-reference them with the main Sterling Ventures accounting server. You know, just to reconcile the accounts, to show a clean separation. It is just boring tax compliance, really. But it would make everything airtight." She stared at me for a long moment. I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was weighing her arrogance against her paranoia. Arrogance won. I looked like a harmless, rule-following mouse. "Fine," she snapped, annoyed at the inconvenience. "This is why I pay people, except I am not paying you. I will have my IT guy grant you access. But it is view only. Do you understand just the vendor ledgers? I do not want you getting your clumsy little fingers anywhere else. Just fix the compliance issue and do not bother me about it again." "Thank you, Mrs. Sterling," I said, breathing an internal sigh of relief. "You will not even know I am there." She had granted me limited access, a digital peephole. She had no idea she had just handed a master locksmith the key to the front door. I knew my way around basic business accounting software. I knew that a view-only permission on a poorly secured server was little more than a polite suggestion. That night, the tension at home was thick, but for a different reason. Liam was giddy. He was pacing the living room, a beer in his hand, a manic grin on his face. "And you said she was a fraud," he announced, his voice triumphant. "You said it was a bad investment." "What are you talking about, Liam?" I asked, loading the dishwasher, my back to him. "Check the account. Alara, check the joint savings." I stopped. I dried my hands slowly, turned around, and pulled my phone from my pocket. I logged into our bank app. My breath caught. There was a new deposit, made that afternoon, a transfer for $800. The memo line read, "Sterling Ventures Q1 dividend." Liam was beaming. "See, $800, just like that. Our first return. Isabella said it was just the beginning. She said that biotech company is already paying out. In 1 month. Alara, can your boring job do that?" I looked at the number. $800. I felt sick. My husband, the marketing man, saw a return. The forensic accountant, saw the oldest trick in the book. This was not a dividend. This was not profit. This was bait. It was a classic entry-level Ponzi scheme maneuver. Isabella had taken the massive investment from Liam, our money, and was now paying him back tiny fractions of it, pretending it was a profit to keep him quiet, happy, and loyal, to encourage him to invest more. The money had not come from a biotech company. It had come from the next fool in line, or, more likely, directly from Liam's own principal investment. He was a fish, celebrating the deliciousness of the worm, unaware of the hook embedded inside it. That is impressive. Liam, I said, my voice hollow. His face fell. Impressive? That is it, Alara. This is our future. I am just tired, I said, locking the phone. I am going to bed. I did not go to bed. I waited. I waited until 1 a.m, until the house was still and the only sound was Liam's heavy breathing from the bedroom. Then I slipped into my home office and closed the door. I turned on my computer, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dark room. I logged into the Sterling Ventures portal. The view-only access Isabella had granted me was, as I suspected, a joke. It was a basic firewall, easily circumvented with a simple privilege escalation script. I was not a hacker, but I did not need to be. I was an auditor. I knew exactly where companies hid their digital keys. Within 10 minutes, I had root access. I was not just in the vendor ledger. I was in everything. The main server, the email archives, the executive calendars, the private folders. I plugged in my external hard drive, a 2-terabyte encrypted brick. I did not cherry pick. I did not browse. I initiated a full clone of the primary data cluster. I took every email, every contract, every bank statement, every hidden spreadsheet. The download bar crept across the screen for 2 agonizing hours. I sat in the darkness, watching, every creak of the house, every distant siren, making my heart leap into my throat. Finally, the transfer completed. I erased the server logs of my access, logged out, and shut down the machine. I went to bed, hiding the hard drive in my briefcase, and lay awake, staring at the ceiling until dawn. The next day, in my supply closet office, I began my real work. I plugged the encrypted drive into my personal laptop. The truth was worse than I could have imagined. First, the revolutionary biotech acquisition. I found the file. It was a complete fabrication. The company, Aegis Biomed, was a shell based in Delaware that was 3 months from bankruptcy. It had no assets, no viable patents. The acquisition was a press release Isabella had paid for, a complete fiction designed to lure in new investors. But that was just the appetizer. The main course was in a folder labeled Financials Master. Isabella and Marcus were not just in debt. They were drowning in it. Maxed out credit lines, defaulted loans from high-interest private lenders. The entire West Lake Hills lifestyle was a mirage, funded by a desperate, frantic influx of new money. Then I found the file that made the air leave my lungs. It was not in the finance folder. It was in Marcus's personal email drafts. It was a PDF from a major commercial bank. It was a notice of default on the mansion itself. They did not own the house. They had not made a payment in 6 months. The bank had already seized the property in a summary judgment. A final, court-ordered foreclosure auction date had been set. Isabella was not just hosting a party. She was a squatter in her own home. The gala. The most important night of the year. It was not a celebration. It was a desperate, last-ditch cash grab. She was planning to rake in hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, in charity donations, and disappear before the bank physically removed her. And Liam, my dear, foolish husband, had just handed our life savings to a woman who was already packing her bags. He had not invested in a dream. He had paid for her escape. I had the data, but the data was a photograph of a crime that was still in motion. I had the foreclosure notice, the fake biotech deal, and the Elysian Imports ledger. I knew what they were doing, but I did not have the full scope. I did not understand the desperation, the motive, or the true depth of the fraud. The hard drive was the skeleton. But I needed the narrative, the human element. There was only one person who had that. Marcus. He was the weak link. I saw it at the party. He was not a predator like his wife. He was a coward, and a coward is just a victim who has not been given a better option. He was the man drinking scotch in the corner while his life burned down. He was the one who looked like he was running calculations. He was the one who could be broken. I found him easily. His calendar, which I had copied from the server, was a monument to emptiness, save for one recurring daily appointment. Private meeting, blocked out from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. every single weekday. The location was always the same, the bar at the Driscoll Hotel. It was not a meeting. It was a ritual. He was a man slowly, methodically, and expensively drinking himself to death on a Tuesday afternoon. I walked into the hotel. The bar was dark, smelling of old leather, wood polish, and whiskey. It was quiet. He was there, exactly as I'd pictured, in the darkest booth in the back, hunched over a heavy glass. He looked worse than he had at the party. His skin was gray. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the drink. He was staring into the amber liquid as if it held an answer. I did not hesitate. I did not ask for permission. I walked straight to his booth and slid onto the leather bench opposite him. He looked up, his eyes startled and bloodshot. It took him a second to place me. "Elena," he finally said, his voice a dry rasp. "Ilara." "What? What are you doing here?" He tried to muster some of Isabella's authority, but it came out as a pathetic squeak. "Hello, Marcus." My voice was quiet, flat. A waitress drifted over. "Club soda, please," I said. She nodded and disappeared. "You should not be here," Marcus muttered, his eyes darting around the empty bar, as if his wife might materialize from the shadows. "Neither should you," I replied. "But we all have our little habits. Yours, apparently, is midday scotch, and, of course, shell corporations." He froze. His glass, halfway to his lips, stopped dead in the air. I have no idea what you are talking about." I leaned forward, placing my hands on the table. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I had the ledger. Elysian Imports, LLC. It is a rather creative name for a personal bank account. Do not you think? The color drained from his face. He looked like a man who had just been told his car was hanging over a cliff. That is a vendor, for the gala, a caterer." "Is it?" I said, maintaining the calm, conversational tone. "Because I pulled the state registration. It was incorporated 3 days after you and Isabella bought the mansion. It is registered to a post office box. And the listed agent is you. $75,000 has moved from the charity's account to that one in the last 6 weeks. Marcus, that is wire fraud. It is embezzlement, and it is incredibly sloppy." You do not know anything," he stammered, but his bravado was gone, replaced by a raw, naked panic. "I know the invoices were printed on copy paper. I know the foreclosure notice on the house was served last month. I know the biotech deal is a complete fabrication. The company is bankrupt. I am a forensic accountant. Marcus, this is not a guess. This is a fact. You are laundering money, and you are terrible at it." He stared at me. He put the glass down on the table, but his hand was shaking so violently that scotch slopped over the rim, puddling on the dark wood. He did not notice. He looked at me, and his eyes, stripped of their fear, were just tired. He was not angry. He looked, more than anything, relieved. "She made me," he whispered. He put his face in his hands, his shoulders starting to shake. He was not just crying, he was collapsing, disintegrating in front of me. "You have no idea," he said, his voice muffled by his palms. "You see the house, you see the parties. You have no idea what it is like, being married to her." He looked up, his eyes wild with a paranoia that had been brewing for years. "It was not always like this. At first, it was just excessive. But then it became a game. It is all a game to her. Alara. He was talking fast now, the words tumbling out in a desperate, cathartic rush. She is a pathological narcissist. She does not just want the money. She wants to win. She loves the con. She loves watching people believe her, watching them hand over their trust. She thinks everyone who believes her is an idiot. She despises them for it. She threatened me, he choked out. Said she would ruin me, tell everyone I had lost her family money, that I was incompetent. She has me so leveraged, I could not leave. So you helped her, I said. You laundered the charity money. He let out a sound that was half a laugh and half a sob. The charity money god. No, that is nothing. That is grocery money. That is what she uses to lease the diamonds for her parties. You think this whole empire, this house, is built on $75,000. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. We are not just broke, Alara. We are owned. The seed money, the capital that started all of this 5 years ago. It did not come from a bank. It came from a private equity group in Houston. The kind of men who do not send polite letters from lawyers when you default. They are dangerous. They are the ones who are getting impatient. He took a long, shuddering pull of his scotch. The gala. It is not for the bank. The bank is a done deal. The house is gone. The gala is to pay them. It is the last-ditch effort to get enough cash to pay them off before they... He did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. I processed this. Dangerous investors. This was worse than I thought. My anger at Liam felt almost small by comparison. He was not just a fool. He was a minnow swimming in a tank of sharks. Liam, I said, my voice hard. My husband. He invested. Our savings. Marcus looked at me, and a new, strange expression crossed his face. It was pity. Oh, Alara, he said, his voice suddenly soft. Your husband. He is the biggest fool of them all. He is the mark she is proudest of. The validation. You know, getting her own family to buy in. He gave her our savings, I repeated, the fact a cold stone in my gut. Marcus just shook his head slowly. The pity in his eyes deepened. The savings that was just the buy-in. That was the appetizer. She did not just want his savings, Alara. She wanted everything. I did not understand. A cold, metallic dread began to fill my mouth. Well, what are you talking about? He came back, Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. He came back about 2 weeks ago, right after you started, working. He was so proud. He wanted in. He told her he did not just want to be an investor. He wanted to be a partner. What did he do? Marcus. My voice did not sound like my own. Isabella. She played him perfectly. She told him she had a temporary cash flow problem, that a major wire was delayed. She said she needed a real partner, someone who was all in to bridge the gap. She promised him a 20% stake in the biotech deal, the deal that does not even exist. What did he do? I whispered. Marcus looked down at the puddle of whiskey on the table. He could not meet my eyes. He secretly refinanced the apartment. Your apartment. The one you two own together. He took out a second mortgage on it. I could not breathe. The music in the bar, the sound of the ice machine, it all faded to a dull roar. The world narrowed to the dark. Polished table. He brought her a cashier's check. Marcus finished. My lips were numb. How much? $500,000. $500,000. It was not just our savings. It was our home, the roof over my head, the equity I had spent 15 years of my career building. He had taken it, all of it, and he had handed it to a woman in a rented house to pay off her loan sharks. I was not just in danger of losing my marriage. I was not just humiliated. I had lost everything. I was, in this single horrific moment, homeless. I stood up. The club soda sat on the table, untouched. Marcus looked up at me, a pathetic, broken man in an expensive suit. "Ilara," he pleaded, "I am so sorry. I looked down at him. The flicker of pity I had felt was gone, burned away by a glacial rage. He was not a victim. He was a willing accomplice. His weakness, his cowardice, had just cost me my entire life. "You will be," I said. I turned and walked out of the dark bar, into the bright, unforgiving light of the afternoon, a woman with absolutely nothing left to lose. I do not remember the ride home. I must have called a car, but the journey is a blank. A dark, hollow void between the moment Marcus said $500,000 and the moment I stood in front of my own apartment door. My home. It was not my home anymore. It was collateral. It was a debt I could not pay. It was a crime scene, and the man who had committed the crime was waiting inside. I felt a strange, terrifying calm settle over me. The panic was gone, burned away. The grief was not there yet. In its place was a perfect, crystalline, cold. It was the absolute zero of a life that had just been shattered. I had nothing. My savings were gone. My marriage was a lie. My home was stolen. When you have nothing, you have no fear. I was, for the first time in my life, completely, utterly, and dangerously free. I turned the key and walked in. Liam was in the living room, standing by the window, a glass of wine in his hand. He was backlit by the city lights, and he was smiling, beaming. "Ilara, there you are," he said, his voice bright and expansive. "I was wondering where you got to. I called the mansion, and the housekeeper said you'd left hours ago." I said nothing. I just looked at him. I looked at this man, this stranger, and I saw him with the perfect, dispassionate clarity of my profession. He was a liability, a bad investment, a total loss. He either did not see the look on my face or, more likely, was so consumed by his own joy that he did not care to. He walked over to me, still smiling, and put his free hand on my shoulder. "You will not believe the day I have had," he said, his voice dropping, as if sharing a wonderful secret. "Isabella called me, personally, not an assistant, her. She wanted to talk about our partnership." Our partnership. The word was a parody. "She is just so impressed." "Ilara," he gushed, his eyes shining with that same pathetic, cult-like devotion I had seen at the party. "She said she has never seen such dedication. She said you have been an absolute godsend, handling all those boring little details." I kept my face perfectly, inhumanly still. I was a statue of ice, and, "Ilara." He paused, taking a sip of his wine, drawing out the moment. "She wants to thank you. She wants to thank us." He was practically vibrating with the victory. He thought this was his win. "She is hosting the gala in just a few days, and she wants you to make a speech." I held his gaze. "She wants you to get up on that stage," he continued, his voice swelling with pride. "She wants to introduce you as the new volunteer financial director of the Sterling Bright Future Fund. She wants you to talk to everyone, all her most important investors, about the heart of the foundation, the importance of her charity work, her generosity." He smiled, a wide, idiotic, self-congratulatory grin. "This is it, Ilara. This is it. We are in. We are finally in. She sees you. She finally sees us." I looked at him, the man who had secretly, illegally, mortgaged our home. The man who had taken 15 years of my life and my work and handed it to a con artist to pay off her loan sharks. This man, my husband, was now standing in our stolen apartment, celebrating the fact that the thief was giving me the honor of getting on a stage to tell the world what a wonderful person she was. The betrayal was so total, so absolute. It was almost a work of art. It was perfect in its awfulness. And in that moment, the last tiny frozen ember of the woman I used to be, the woman who loved him, the woman who would have tried to save him, went out. I felt the corners of my mouth pull back. It was not a smile I recognized. It was a muscular reflex, a baring of teeth. It was the mask of a predator that has just seen its prey walk directly into a trap. Liam saw it, and his own smile widened. He thought I was happy. He thought he had finally won me over. A speech, I said. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from a great distance. Well, that is quite an honor, Liam. It is, he said, relieved and triumphant. It really is. Then of course I will do it, I said. The cold smile locked in place. I would not miss it for the world. I will prepare a speech that no one in that room will ever forget. That is my girl, he shouted, pulling me into a one-armed hug, his wine glass held aloft. I knew you would see. I knew you would finally get on board. I let him hold me for a second, my body rigid, my heart beating a slow, cold, steady rhythm. He could not feel the ice. He could not see the new person standing right in front of him. Later that night, after he had fallen asleep, the deep, untroubled sleep of a complete and utter fool, I went into my home office. I closed the door. I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I picked up my phone. I did not call the police. I did not call a lawyer. Not yet. I sent a text message to Marcus Sterling. I had taken his number from the server files. I know about the second mortgage. I know about the Houston lenders. His reply was almost instantaneous. A single panicked question mark. I texted him an address, a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. 30 minutes. When I arrived, he was already there, huddled in a booth at the back, looking like he had not slept in a year. He was visibly shaking. I did not sit down. I stood over the booth, a shadow in the harsh fluorescent light. I pulled a small object from my pocket and slid it across the table. It was a single, encrypted USB drive. What is this? He whispered, his eyes wide. That, I said, is a complete copy of the Sterling Ventures server. It is every email, every ledger, every fake invoice. It is the real bankruptcy filing for Aegis Biomed. It is the wire transfer details for Elysian Imports. It is the names of the men in Houston, and it is the $500,000 cashier's check from my husband, which constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud. It is, in short, everything. He stared at the drive as if it were a snake. You have two options, Marcus, I said, my voice as quiet and dead as the diner. Option 1, you do nothing. I walk out of here, and in 3 days, at the gala, I give this to the press, the IRS, and the SEC. You and Isabella are arrested on the spot. Your dangerous friends in Houston will read about it in the news, and they will find you, probably in prison, and you will take the full fall, right next to her. I paused. Option 2. You take that drive. Tomorrow morning, you walk into the downtown FBI field office. You tell them you are a victim, a coerced witness, and you are terrified for your life. You hand them that drive, and you become the star witness in their case against your wife. You will be granted full immunity, and you will be the first one in the door. You will be protected. He was pale, sweating. She will find out. She will destroy me. She is already destroyed, I said. The only question is whether you go down with her. You helped her ruin my life. Marcus, you helped her steal my home. I do not care what happens to you, but I am giving you the one and only chance you are going to get to save yourself. Cooperate, or burn with her. It makes no difference to me. I looked at my watch. I will give you 48 hours to make your decision. By then, the FBI will need to be in place. I turned and walked out, leaving him staring at the small piece of plastic that held his entire, pathetic life. The choice was his. The execution would be mine. The next 3 days were a blur of cold, precise, Meticulous action. I was no longer a wife, no longer a victim. I was a forensic accountant building a case. Only this was not a report. It was a demolition. I continued to go to the mansion each day, playing the part of the devoted, slightly overwhelmed volunteer. Isabella was too busy with dress fittings and seating charts to pay me any attention, and Liam was a ghost in my own home, a man I moved around, a piece of furniture I no longer saw. He saw me, though. He saw me hunched over my laptop late into the night, my face illuminated by the screen, my fingers flying, practicing the speech. "Alara," he asked on Thursday night, leaning against the office doorframe, a self-satisfied smirk on his face. "Do not forget what I said. You should open with a joke, something light. It will get them on your side." "I will keep that in mind." "Liam," I said without looking up. I was not writing a speech. I was curating an execution. I was building what my industry calls a fraud box, a perfect self-contained digital package of the entire crime, so clean and undeniable that no lawyer could spin it. I took the terabytes of data from the server and refined them into a devastating narrative. I created folders. Folder 1, Elysian Imports. It contained the state registration, the P.O. box address, the complete bank ledger showing $75,000 in transfers from the charity, and Marcus's signature on the incorporation documents. Folder 2, Aegis Biomed. This held the company's real, near-bankrupt financial statements, the emails from Isabella's team creating the fake press release, and the original worthless stock purchase agreement. Folder 3, the mansion. This had the original mortgage, the string of missed payments, and the final court-ordered notice of default and foreclosure. Folder 4, the investors. This folder was the most damning. It contained the wire transfer confirmations from Liam, including the catastrophic $500,000 second mortgage. It also had the wire details from 3 other high-value investors I had identified: a retired oil executive in Dallas, a surgeon in Houston, a tech founder from California who had, combined, poured over $3 million into Isabella's non-existent biotech fund in the last 6 months. When it was complete, it was a work of art, a perfect digital coffin. My next step was the accelerant. I needed the press. I did my research. I did not want a local blogger. I wanted a killer. I found him David Ackerman, a senior investigative journalist at Forbes. His specialty was unmasking high society Ponzi schemes. He was ruthless, precise, and he hated frauds. I created a new, anonymous, encrypted email address. I sent him one. Simple message: I have your next cover story. Complete proof of a multi-million-dollar high society fraud in Austin. "What is your secure drop?" He replied within an hour with a link to a military-grade encrypted server. I uploaded the entire fraud box. Then I sent a second message. "This is everything: the bank statements, the shell companies, the foreclosure notice, the wire fraud. The woman's name is Isabella Sterling. She is hosting a massive charity gala this Saturday night at the foreclosed property. It is her final cash grab before she disappears." I set the hook. The Mark who just lost everything is her husband's cousin, who she forced to work as her volunteer accountant. That's me. She has just invited me on stage to give a speech. His reply was immediate. "This is dynamite. When can we publish?" I gave him my terms. "You publish on Saturday at exactly 9 p.m. Central Time, not a minute before. By then, all the major investors, the Marks, and the entire Austin social scene will be in that ballroom, in her hand. I want the story to break while they are all in the room." "I will handle the rest," he agreed. The media was armed. Next, I armed the victims. I used another anonymous email to contact the 3 other major investors I had found in the ledgers: the oil man, the surgeon, the tech founder. The message was brief. "You are a victim of Isabella Sterling. I have definitive proof she is running a Ponzi scheme. Your investment is gone. Be at the Sterling Bright Future Fund Gala on Saturday night. Arrive by 8 p.m. and stay near the stage. At 9 p.m., important financial information will be revealed that will be of great interest to you. You will want to be there to see her face. 3 replies came back within hours. They would be there. Now, for the final piece of leverage, the house itself. I knew from the documents that the bank was a large commercial lender. They had the legal right to the property, but the foreclosure was a civil matter. It was slow. I needed to make it fast. I called the bank's asset recovery department, again from a burner number. I disguised my voice, pitching it lower. I am calling with an anonymous tip regarding the property at 1400 Westlake Summit. I am an employee of a catering company. I know you have a foreclosure order. You should know that this Saturday night, the debtor, Isabella Sterling, is hosting a party for 300 people. She has moved millions of dollars in rented art, jewelry, and audio-visual equipment onto the property. I also have reason to believe she is planning to abscond with the cash proceeds from the charity auction immediately following the event. It may be your last chance to seize any assets. The man on the other end, who had sounded bored, was suddenly very interested. Who is this? Just someone who does not like seeing thieves win. Saturday night. You might want to send your civil enforcement team. It will be quite a show. I hung up. The pieces were in place. The press. The victims. The bank. My last act of preparation was for myself. I opened a new, secret escrow account at a different bank, one with no connection to Liam or our joint finances. I liquidated the last of my personal stock options from my job, a small emergency fund I had kept separate from our marriage. It was not much, just over $10,000. But it was my money. It was the only money I had left in the world. I transferred every cent of it into the new account. It was my escape fund. I was formatting the final slides for my speech, a presentation that was, in reality, a summary of my findings when my personal cell phone buzzed. It was Friday night, less than 24 hours to go. It was an unknown number. I answered. Alara. The voice was strained, terrified. It was Marcus. I did it, he whispered, his voice shaking so badly I could barely understand him. I went to the FBI, just like you said. I gave them the drive. They are taking it. Alara. They are taking it all. They said, I am a cooperating witness. I felt a cold wave of relief. The final legal hammer was now in place. Where are you? At a hotel, a safe location. They do not want me at the party. They said it is too dangerous. They said she might get spooked. He took a ragged breath. They are putting a wire on me. They want me to call her, tomorrow, before the party. They want to record her trying to get me to move the last of the money? Good, I said. You did the right thing. Marcus, you just saved yourself. God, he whispered. What is going to happen tomorrow night? I looked at the title slide I had just created on my laptop. It read, A Forensic Review of the Sterling Bright Future Fund. She asked for a speech? I said. I am going to give her one. I hung up. The night of the gala. The mansion was not just decorated, it was weaponized. Isabella, in her final act of grand theater, had transformed the foreclosed property into a cathedral of her own success. The long driveway was lined with flaming gas torches. Valets in crisp red vests hurried to park Bentleys and Teslas. Inside, the grand ballroom was overflowing. The air was heavy with the scent of thousands of white lilies and the cloying, sweet smell of expensive perfume. A string quartet played softly in the corner. This was it, the wealthiest, most powerful, and most influential members of Austin society, all gathered in one room, breathing the same recycled air, their checkbooks ready. I arrived with Liam at my side. He was vibrating with a nervous, electric energy, constantly adjusting his bow tie. He had been talking nonstop in the car, coaching me, reminding me. I had said nothing. I had chosen my dress with forensic precision. It was not a glittering ball gown designed to blend in or compete. It was a simple, severe, perfectly tailored black sheath. My hair was pulled back into a tight, merciless knot. I wore no jewelry. I was not dressed as Elena. the mousy volunteer. I was dressed as Alara Vance, the managing director. I was dressed for a liquidation. As we stepped onto the marble entryway, Liam gripped my arm, his hand damp and hot. "Ilara," he hissed, his voice desperate and low. "Please, just remember what we talked about. Only good things. Smile. Tell them how generous she is, how important this is." He looked into my eyes, and I could see the raw, childish terror beneath his ambition. He was a man betting his entire life on a single roll of the dice. "Our future, Ilara. Our future depends on this night. Do not mess this up for us." "I would not dream of it," I said. My voice was calm, and the calmness seemed to scare him more than an argument would have. He took my arm, and we walked into the ballroom. Isabella was in her element. She was a supernova, standing near the grand staircase in a dress made of glittering silver sequins, a star consuming all the light in the room. She was laughing, her voice booming over the music, her hands touching arms, clasping shoulders, pulling people into her orbit. Around her neck was a blindingly bright diamond necklace, the one I knew from the rental receipts. She was working the room, focusing her attention on a small cluster of men I did not recognize her next round of victims. She was at the absolute zenith of her power, a queen surveying her kingdom, utterly untouchable. I let my eyes travel. My pieces were on the board. By the long, crowded bar, nursing a club soda and looking impeccably bored in his tuxedo, was David Ackerman from Forbes. He was pretending to check his phone, but his eyes were sharp, scanning, waiting. He was my first domino. Near the small, elevated stage, standing awkwardly together as if drawn by an invisible string, were the 3 other investors I had contacted. The retired oil executive from Dallas, his arms crossed, his face a mask of impatience. The Houston surgeon, who kept checking his watch. The young tech founder, who was looking at Isabella with an expression of pure, unfiltered suspicion. They were my second domino. And at my side, Liam, my husband. He was already sipping the cheap champagne from a stolen Dom Perignon bottle, his face flushed with pride, looking at Isabella with the adoration of a fanatic. He was the final domino. The next hour was a performance. I smiled. I nodded. I allowed Liam to parade me around, introducing me as my brilliant wife, Ilara. She's the one who's been handling the finances for this whole thing. I shook hands. I accepted compliments on work I had not done. I watched the clock. At 8:30, the silent auction closed. At 8:45, the string quartet finished their set. At exactly 8:55 in the evening, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. A single, brilliant white spotlight hit the stage. Isabella glided into it, a microphone in her hand, a triumphant smile on her face. A hush fell over the 300 guests. "Darlings," she purred, her voice echoing, amplified, through the room. "Darlings, thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight, for opening your hearts, and for supporting our dream, the Sterling Bright Future Fund." Polite applause. She held up a hand, her rented diamonds flashing. "You all know my passion is giving back," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured emotion. "But I cannot do it alone. This year, I have had the most extraordinary help, a woman of tireless dedication, of passion, of, frankly, a brilliant mind for all those boring little details." Liam preened beside me, squeezing my hand so hard I thought he might break a bone. "And tonight," Isabella continued, "I want her to tell you all, from the heart, what this organization is all about. It is my great honor to introduce you to our dedicated volunteer financial director and my very own beloved, brilliant cousin, Ilara Vance." The applause was louder this time. Liam pushed me forward. "Go, go," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "This is it. This is our moment." I moved through the crowd. My steps were steady, measured. The world seemed to slow down. I could feel the cold, hard weight of the encrypted USB drive in my small clutch. I walked up the 3 steps to the stage. Isabella embraced me in a theatrical, one-armed hug, the sequins of her dress scratching my cheek. "You will be wonderful, Elena," she whispered, her smile as cold and hard as her eyes. "Thank you, Isabella," I whispered back. She stepped away, ceding the spotlight to me. I walked to the lectern. I placed my small, sleek tablet on the polished wood. I looked out at the sea of faces, 300 wealthy, expectant, ignorant faces, all trained on me. I saw Liam in the front row, his face split by the proudest, most idiotic grin I had ever seen. I looked at the small digital clock on the back wall, just over the exit sign. It read 8:59 p.m. I leaned toward the microphone. I took a breath, letting the silence stretch, building the tension. I watched the clock. 57 seconds. 58. 59. I opened my mouth. Before I could utter a single word, a new sound filled the room. It was not my voice. It was a chime, a single, electronic ping. It was followed immediately by another, and another, a cascade of notification tones, a digital plague, sweeping through the silent ballroom. In the front row, a man frowned and pulled out his phone. The woman next to him did the same. Then, all at once, as if a switch had been thrown, the entire room was illuminated by the blue-white glow of cell phones. Every head was down. The ballroom was filled with the sound of 100 simultaneous vibrations. I saw David Ackerman at the bar. He was not looking at his phone. He was looking directly at me, and he slowly, deliberately raised his glass. A gasp, sharp and loud, came from the left side of the room. It was the surgeon. The oil executive from Dallas looked up from his screen, his face turning a deep, dangerous shade of purple. He looked past me, his eyes locking on Isabella, who was standing at the side of the stage, her perfect smile just beginning to falter. I looked down at my own tablet, where I had the alert queued. I read the headline of the push notification from Forbes, the one that had just landed in every pocket, in every purse, in the entire room. Headline: Austin socialite, Isabella Sterling, accused of multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme, mansion in foreclosure. The silence that fell was not just a lack of sound, it was a physical weight, a vacuum that sucked all the air out of the room. 300 people, frozen, their faces lit by the pale blue glow of their phones. The only sound was the faint, tinny strains of the string quartet, who had not yet realized they should stop playing. Isabella, at the side of the stage, was no longer a supernova. She was a ghost. Her face, under the expensive makeup, had gone a waxy, sallow color. Her smile was frozen, a grotesque rictus. "Well," she said, her voice a brittle, high-pitched laugh. It seems there is some sort of absurd, libelous, fake news story being circulated. How tacky, hackers. I suppose." She turned to a large man in a suit near the stage, her head of security. This is an outrage. Someone is trying to sabotage our wonderful evening." She pointed a shaking, manicured finger at me. I think she has had quite enough time on stage. Turn off her microphone." The man nodded and moved toward the sound booth. I saw Isabella's eyes, frantic and murderous, lock onto mine. She thought she had won. She thought she could silence me. But I had not come to play. I had come to liquidate. I reached into the small black clutch at my side. I did not pull out a weapon. I pulled out a small, palm-sized black Bluetooth speaker. I had paired it to my tablet before I ever left the house. I had tested the connection in the car. I clicked a single button on my tablet's screen. A sharp, electronic chirp echoed through the room as the speaker connected. I did not need the house microphone. I had brought my own. I turned the volume to maximum. "Good evening," I said. My voice, amplified by my own device, was not loud, but it was perfectly, terrifyingly clear. It cut through the nervous whispers like a surgeon's scalpel. Every head, every phone, snapped back to me. Isabella's head whipped around. Her mouth fell open. "Isabella asked me to come up here tonight to speak about her generosity," I continued, my voice even, cold and precise. "She wanted me to talk about the heart of her charity. As the volunteer financial director, I have spent the last several weeks analyzing the numbers, so let us talk about the numbers. The facts." I tapped my tablet. The screen behind me, the one that was supposed to show a looping video of smiling children, flickered and changed. It now showed a simple, stark spreadsheet. My spreadsheet. The Sterling Bright Future Fund has, to date, raised $3.4 million this year from its generous patrons. A few people in the crowd, the ones not reading the article, nodded. A few even started a scattered, confused applause. "And I have personally reconciled the accounts," I said, my voice cutting them off. "The total amount of donations that have gone to any actual registered charity is $112,000. The room went dead silent again. A man in the front row, the Dallas oil executive, let out a low, dangerous sound, like a growl. "What did she say?" "That is a 3% payout," I clarified, in case the math was too difficult. "So, you might be asking, where did the other 97% of your good faith donations go?" I was asking the same question. I tapped the screen again. A new slide appeared. A logo. "Elysian Imports LLC. A significant portion," I said, "went to this company. For example, a payment of $500,000 for event consulting services. I found this to be a very interesting company. It has no office. It is registered to a post office box in a strip mall. And it is a shell corporation, founded and solely owned by Marcus Sterling, Isabella's husband." A collective, shattering gasp went through the room. It was the sound of 300 people finally, truly, understanding. "She was laundering your donations," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Stealing your tax-deductible gifts to pay for her personal expenses. You lying bitch!" Isabella shrieked from the side of the stage. She was no longer a socialite. She was a cornered animal. "Security, get her off that stage. Get her—" The security man started moving toward me, but he was blocked by the oil executive, who stood up and put a thick, jeweled hand on the guard's chest. "Let her finish." I tapped the screen again. The fake Aegis Biomed press release appeared. But the charity was just at the beginning. Where did the investment money go? The money from the revolutionary biotech acquisition, $1.2 million. I tracked. The problem is, Aegis Biomed is a bankrupt entity with no assets and no patents. She does not own it. The acquisition was a press release she paid to have printed. The money simply vanished. I turned my head slightly, looking for Liam in the front row. I found him. He was standing, but he looked broken. He was not angry. He was not looking at me. He was staring at Isabella, his face pale, his mouth slightly open, a look of profound, sickening, childlike betrayal in his eyes. He had finally, at this last possible second, understood. "The rest of the money," I continued. "It went to pay for this, for the lights, for the rented orchestra. It went to pay the lease on this diamond necklace she is wearing. And, most importantly, it went to pay the monthly interest to her original investors, the high-risk lenders who funded this entire fantasy. It is a classic Ponzi scheme." I took a breath. This was the last line, the one I had been waiting to deliver. I looked directly at my husband. "And I want to give a special, personal thank you to my own husband, Liam Vance," I said, my voice ringing with a cold, clear finality. He believed in Isabella so much. He wanted to be a partner so badly that last week He secretly and illegally took out a second mortgage on our apartment, and he gave her $500,000 of our money. Liam made a small, strangled sound. He crumpled, not falling, but folding in on himself. "The money is gone, Liam," I said, letting him, and the entire room, absorb the full, devastating weight of it. "All of it." "Get her!" Isabella screamed, her voice cracking into a raw, feral shriek. She lunged for the stage herself, her silver dress glittering, her face a mask of pure, murderous rage. "I will kill you!" But she never made it. At that exact, perfect moment, the grand, oversized double doors of the ballroom burst open. They were not flung open by guests. They were kicked. The room erupted. It was not the police. It was, as I had hoped, far more theatrical. A team of 6 men and 2 women in dark blue windbreakers with civil enforcement, stamped on the back, marched into the room in tactical formation. They were not here to arrest. They were here to seize. The man in the lead held a clipboard and a bullhorn. "Mrs. Isabella Sterling," he shouted, his voice electronically amplified, drowning out the music, the screams, everything. Isabella froze, halfway to the stage. "We are officers of the court executing a writ of seizure on behalf of Texas Commerce Bank. This property, and all non-personal assets within it, are in default and are now the property of the bank." He did not wait for an answer. He turned to his team. "Tag it. Tag it all." The team fanned out. They were carrying large rolls of bright, neon orange seizure stickers. They began, with a ruthless, bureaucratic efficiency, to move through the stunned, frozen crowd. One officer walked up to the grand piano and slapped a sticker on it. Another walked to a rented Rodin statue and slapped a sticker on it. They tagged the sound system. They tagged the bar. They walked past bewildered million-dollar guests and started tagging the silk-upholstered chairs they were sitting on. Isabella Sterling stood alone in the center of the room, her spotlight gone, lit only by the house lights. She watched, her body shaking, as an officer walked up to the 10-foot-tall, ornate, gilded mirror she had posed in front of all night and slapped an orange sticker right in the middle of her reflection. The illusion was not just broken, it was being itemized for auction. The moment the bullhorn fell silent, the room did not just explode, it shattered. The civilized, perfumed veneer of Austin society evaporated, revealing the raw, panicked greed underneath. The 300 guests became a single, terrified entity. The oil executive from Dallas, his face a deep, apoplectic purple, was roaring, trying to shoulder his way past a civil officer. "That is my money. That is my $3 million, you bitch!" he screamed, not at me, but at Isabella. The surgeon from Houston was right behind him, his voice cracking, shouting about his children's education fund. David Ackerman and 2 other journalists I had not recognized were no longer observers. They were sharks that had smelled blood. They vaulted onto the stage, their cameras flashing, creating a blinding, disorienting strobe effect that caught the chaos in freeze frame. Microphones were shoved in my face. "Ms. Vance, Ms. Vance. How long have you known who else was involved?" I ignored them. My eyes stayed locked on Isabella. She was trapped. The civil team, now tagging the auction items, was in front of her. The furious, screaming investors were to her left. The press was on the stage behind her. She did the only thing a cornered animal could do. She spun on her sequined heel and made a desperate, clumsy sprint for the service door by the kitchens, her only escape route. She never made it. The door swung open before she reached it, but it was not a caterer. 2 people, a man and a woman in plain, dark suits, stepped out, blocking her path. They moved with a quiet, calm deliberation that was more terrifying than the mob. "Mrs. Isabella Sterling," the woman said, her voice cutting through the noise. She held up a small leather wallet, flashing a badge. "FBI, you are under arrest for wire fraud." Isabella's reply was not a word. It was a sound, a high-pitched, guttural shriek of pure, unadulterated rage. She looked less like a socialite and more like a rabid animal, her face contorted. "Get your hands off me, do you know who I am?" She lunged, her perfectly manicured nails aiming for the female agent's eyes. The agent did not even flinch. She caught Isabella's wrist in a move that was fluid and brutal, spinning her around and slamming her, face first, against the wall. The thud was sickening. "Yes, ma'am," the agent said, all business, as she twisted Isabella's arm behind her back. "We do." The sharp, metallic zip-click of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound in the room. It was the sound of the entire illusion finally, permanently, ending. While Isabella was being restrained, screaming obscenities and threats, the civil team began their work in earnest, and the ballroom descended into pure pandemonium. The orange stickers were just the beginning. "We are seizing the furniture," the lead officer announced through his bullhorn. His team, efficient and unsentimental, unplugged the string quartet's amplifiers, silencing the last few confused notes of music. They started rolling the grand piano, the one that had been rented, straight toward the open front doors. This sent the guests into a full-blown stampede. They were terrified. They were pushing, shoving, rich men in tuxedos climbing over chairs to get to the exit, women in designer gowns tripping on their own dresses, desperate to get out. It was a grotesque, panicked exodus. Through all of it, the screaming, the flashing cameras, the sight of Isabella being dragged, kicking, through the kitchen door, I remained on the stage. I calmly disconnected my speaker, placed it back in my clutch, and picked up my tablet. My work was finished. I walked down the steps, my movements slow and deliberate. The ballroom floor was a swamp of spilled champagne, broken glass, and abandoned shoes. I navigated it easily. And then I saw him, Liam. He was not standing. He was on the floor, on his knees, near where the front row had been. He was just collapsed. His tuxedo was a mess, his bow tie askew. He was staring, unblinking, at the wall where Isabella had been arrested, his body rocking slightly. He was a man who had not just lost his money. He had lost his entire reality. He had worshipped a false god, and he had just watched her be dragged to hell. I walked past him. I did not intend to stop. I had nothing left to say to him. His hand shot out, grabbing my ankle. His grip was a desperate, crushing vice. "Elara," he choked out. His voice was a raw, wet whisper. He looked up at me, his eyes blind with tears of pure, undiluted self-pity and terror. "Elara, what did you do? What did you do? You ruined us. You destroyed everything. That was our money." I stopped. I looked down at his hand, his fingers digging into my skin. I looked at his pathetic, shattered face. Slowly, deliberately, I lifted my foot and shook his hand off, as if he were something unclean. "No, Liam," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was cold. All the anger was gone, burned out. All that was left was the ash. "You are wrong. You ruined us. You ruined us the moment you chose her, a woman you barely knew, over me, your wife. I was trying for us," he sobbed, scrambling, trying to grab me again. I took one step back, out of his reach. "You made me serve a con artist," I said, my voice like ice. "You told me to fetch her ice. You told me to swallow my pride. You did not invest our future. Liam, you gambled with my future. You took 15 years of my work, the home I built, and you handed it to a thief to pay off her loan sharks. You did this. Not me." I looked at him, this hollowed-out shell of a man crumpled on the floor of a foreclosed mansion, and I felt nothing. No pity, no rage, just a balance sheet, finally reaching zero. "You can keep the apartment. Liam, I said. You can have it, and the $500,000 mortgage you put on it. I am done. He stared up at me, his mouth open, uncomprehending. What? What are you saying? I sent the divorce papers to your lawyer's office an hour ago. I said. They will be on his desk in the morning. Goodbye. I turned my back on him. I did not look back. I walked out of the ruined ballroom, stepping over an abandoned diamond earring. I crossed the grand marble foyer, now scarred and tracked with mud from the enforcement team's boots. I walked past the valets, who were standing in a dumbstruck huddle, their keys useless. I walked out the massive front doors and into the cool, clean, quiet night air. It felt incredible. As I walked, I could still hear her, Isabella's voice, a raw, piercing shriek, echoing from an unseen FBI car down the driveway. You do not know who I am. I will sue you. I will sue all of you. Ilara, Ilara. I kept walking. The long, winding driveway was dark. The party torches had been extinguished. My high heels, the ones I had worn to look like an executive, were pinching my feet. They were the last armor of a life that was no longer mine. I stopped, bent down, and unstrapped them. I held them in my hand and kept walking, the rough, cool asphalt of the driveway grounding me, real and solid beneath my bare feet. I walked for what felt like a long time, just the sound of the crickets and the distant sirens. I was leaving the whole, fake, glittering world behind me. I reached the massive iron gates at the end of the drive. Just as I stepped onto the public road, a dark, nondescript sedan pulled up, its headlights cutting through the night. The passenger window rolled down. It was David Ackerman, the Forbes journalist. He looked energized, alive, his eyes bright in the dashboard glow. Ms. Vance, he said, leaning over the passenger seat. That was, without question, the single greatest speech I have ever had the privilege of witnessing. He smiled, a genuine smile of professional respect. Your firm, Veritas Financial Forensics, is going to be incredibly proud of you. That was a masterclass. I stood there for a moment, my shoes in my hand, the night breeze moving my hair. I looked back up the hill, toward the mansion. The lights were all going out, one by one. It was just a big, empty, dark box on a hill, a hollowed-out skull. I shook my head and looked back at Ackerman. I quit this morning. He looked surprised for a fraction of a second, and then he just laughed, a short, appreciative laugh. Well, then what is next for you, Ms. Vance? From now on, I said. I work for myself. I did not get in his car. I just turned and started walking down the dark road, into my new life, leaving the empty, foreclosed, and silent mansion behind me for good. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to connect with you, so please comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.